You're tuned in to the MtG Cable cast, where they cover Magic, the Gathering Finance. All right? You don't know about it? You're tuned in right now and get ready to learn some shit. Buckle your seat belts and light a blunt and get ready for the MtG Cable cast. Starring Reptar and Thirsty, them onion head motherfuckers.
I've hit record.
Awesome. Alrighty, guys, welcome to the newest episode of the Cabal Cast. This week, we kind of picked a topic that's been relevant within our circles.
Yep.
Not necessarily something that's got a lot of publicity on the internet or anything like that, but it's really just, here is where people are at right now with Dominaria Remastered. It's coming out. It's obviously a hot set. A lot of people are really excited for it, which normally would be a great thing, except for how Magic is being run. So let's take it away.
Yep. So right now, Dominaria Remastered gets spoiled, and then 2 days later, Phyrexia All Will Be One PR machine kicks off, and now people are way more interested in what's going on there. And the Philadelphia Mythic Championship, which was also just announced today, they did their PR video. It came out about 2 p.m. EST, and we can see what's going on at that event in regards to secret layers, events, etc., completely overshadowing a reprint set. And it seems like people are interested in the set for some odds and ends, but overall, the interest is pretty light overall. You have to use the same word twice in a sentence like Fred Durst. Now, when I'm looking at this set, I'm going to take a look at it from a vendor perspective, and I'm going to say, okay, what do we need to buy? How much can we buy? Because we've been stressed the entire year, just like the LGS ecosystem.
Yeah.
And our money is tied up. It is in Magic. It is in Yu-Gi-Oh!, Pokemon, whatever else we're doing in our space. And we might not have the standard amount of cash flow that we have usually on hand to make a large order in the first wave. We might wait for the second wave. So we might start looking at this set as, okay, can we pass up the set? Can we avoid buying what we normally would? What is that going to look like? And the time between when we have to place in our orders and start listing singles for pre-sale is, months apart. So we've got to make an educated guess. And if I'm going to look at this set and I'm going to see the highlight cards like we talked about a couple weeks ago when you picked Force of Will, I'm going to say, okay, people are going to care about Force of Will. They're going to care about Mystical Tutor because it's the first reprint that card's going to get. They're going to care about Urza's Incubator. They're going to care about Urza, Yawgmoth, Sylvan Library, all forms of Vamp Tutor, and Time Stretch, among some other cards. Those are like the main EDH highlights. There's Sneak Attack, but that card's kind of whatever. Birds of Paradise is on an interesting tear from a price point perspective, so it's nice to get a reprint on that in 2 different arts to lower the price. But I'm really going to look at the high-end stuff to see what people are going to buy and then do my pack crack math. And there's a really good chance that I might have over-ordered based on what I'm seeing from pre-release, pre-order numbers. So I might actually have to door bust this set because people seem pretty low on it. And I'm judging those numbers right now based on sales on TCG Player. And nothing's seen a lot because it's just getting listed. But even a lot of those high-end cards, there's a ton of variance in those numbers.
Yeah.
But as the vendor, I'm a little bit insulated because I get a deeper cut, kind of, from distro. There is the ability that to, on the occasion, when a set tanks, to push back into distro, like happened with Dragon's Maze. That was basically fire sold back to distro by a lot of players, or a lot of LGS and vendors. And so we have an out. Or moreover, like I said, we can door bust. Yeah. We can sell product in a bundled way that appeals to our clientele. I'm insulated. I have the bigger purse.
Yeah, it's kind of nice because, like you said, vendors being able to door bust and also vendors just having extra access, right? Because, people can win the boxes on the prize wall and then try to convert them into cash somehow. Yeah. It doesn't happen as often as it used to because it used to be every single time you didn't even have to stock it as a vendor because inevitably you would get just a metric ton of it.
Yeah.
From players just at the end of the weekend what are the last tickets that I have? All right, here you go. Take them all. Get them out of here.
Yep.
And it made it a lot easier.
Yeah, we did that. Modern Horizons was a good set to do that with. The first one, Dominaria, first time around, we were buying that set. We talked about that a while back. We talk about it actually all the time.
Yeah,
The more I
it's
think on it.
just a good, like, at the time it was $75.
Yeah.
Cool. $75 is the best number in the room. Whoever pays that gets all the boxes.
It's all. Yep.
Yeah,
And
it was real easy.
Yep,
or you were just the booth next to the prize wall.
There's that. Yeah, and we pallet ship those home.
Yeah.
And easy peasy for us.
Less good on the LGS side.
Yeah.
So this is not just locally here in St. Louis. This is speaking to people that have LGSs on the East Coast, like Delaware, Maryland, some in California even, and a couple actually in the, I guess you'd call it like the Southwest, like, I don't know, Arizona, Nevada area. The general feedback on this is like, look, as an LGS, no, this is actually, unfortunately, the set a lot of people are missing on. It's $220 cost for collector boosters.
Jeez.
And the fact that there are only draft and collector is short term not great for singles values, especially at an LGS where I gotta get 200, I gotta get 220 out of this. And the LGS environment is not as trade friendly as it used to be. A lot of times people are just spending cash. And why that's important is because if I am trading these out, 220 is fine.
Yep.
Because I'm trading for $400+ in cards. But boxes aren't traded for anymore. Someone comes in and buys them and pays cash. And if that's what you're doing, it's not great. I know a couple of stores that basically halved what their normal collector booster allocation would be. Not to mention just them saying, hey, we don't have the money, is also our players just don't want this.
Yeah.
It's not something that they're interested in, that they feel compelled to purchase. And like, yeah, they're really excited for the singles. Everyone is really excited for the singles. But I think, and this is just observation on my part, I legitimately think that the issue is wallet fatigue between chasing serialized cards and then now we're going to be chasing old Border Force of Will foils. And I don't know if that's going to be conducive to this set being purchased and opened, especially because, like, and I still believe Brothers War will be the most opened set ever, even through the next calendar year, because having those serialized cards is so much more chaseable. And I'm not insulated. I can blow these out the door at a loss, but a lot of LGSs, like, they're hand to mouth. We don't really have the luxury as an LGS of taking a loss on stuff, especially with things on the downturn, liquidity's down, everything's just down across the market.
Yeah.
So not having the ability to, like, sure, we can take the loss as an LGS, but the more losses we take on Magic product, the worse it gets for us, because there's a number of stores I know that are, like, struggling on rent, they're struggling on utilities, and everyone's like, oh, well, maybe they should just get better. Like, that's just not the reality. For every 20 LGSs, I would say maybe 4 to 5 have 5 figures liquid in their bank account at most times. Mm-hmm. It's just not something they have ready access to.
Yeah.
That's all it is.
Yeah, and it makes it wicked difficult.
Yeah.
Like, a lot of people don't seem to look at the numbers anymore because... I don't mean financially. This is actually a different point I'm going to make on the chase value on this. A lot of people don't look at the numbers of the cards and sets anymore, it seems like. There are 261 cards in the main set, and then another 160-something on the top end.
Yeah.
And that's like mid-set size combined with another mid-set size. So all said and told, this is a massive set. There's 456 unique cards in the set when you consider all variants. The breakout's pretty easy. It's 101 commons, 80 uncommons, then 3-to-1 rares to mythic. So overall, it's a fair mix. And we know in the collector boosters, you're going to get 4 cards that are rare or higher in every 15 card pack, of which you don't know what set it's going to be in or what slot it'll be in. The retro frame, the borderless, the guaranteed foil, or a combination of that. And if people go back to start looking at the numbers, because this also kind of came and went, we were digging for this before the cast, we couldn't find that breakout that usually comes with each set. The breakout that we had was for Phyrexia. because it completely overshadowed this set. And at the end of the day, no real changes, it seems like, were made to the collector booster breakout. It's just a standard collector booster. There's really nothing special going on. So asking your whales to move in as a 220 apiece is a little difficult, when I don't actually think there's a singular card in the set that's worth that much in any variant. So even on TCG Player right now. Yeah, 160 for a retro frame, or 170 for a retro frame Force of Will, same price for full art, and then the price drops to $50 for a retro frame Vamp. Cool. Actually.
Well, you know what's going to happen to Vamp? It's going to tank when the set releases.
Yeah. And then Urza's actually in between. Somewhere. Sorry. It goes 170 to 100 to 50. Like, that's the way the price scale goes on this. And it is very difficult to ask people to buy into that when they could be buying the singles that they want instead, because those will push the price down like we've seen. And right now, the price on everything besides Vamp is pretty stable. If you were to buy in now, you're not really going to lose a whole lot. Or if you bought in a week ago, in some cases, you really didn't lose a whole lot by pre-ordering. Vamp is the only interesting case because nobody's really placed an order for that card yet. Like regular, I don't care about the variants. I'm just looking at base level stuff. Nobody's bought a singular Vamp yet. And I honestly thought that between Mystical Tutor and Vamp, that's...
one of those should sell way more.
Yeah, between Worldly Tutor and Vamp, I thought we would see a lot of pressure placed on this set. But the more you dig in, the more you realize this is just kind of yet another blase set. And it feels like the Explorers of Ixalan kit, that like 4-player thing that had not Time Warp in it, and Galta, and some other odds and ends, that at the end of the day, like 18 months later, made it worthwhile to hold on to those things in Sealed, which is a fairly short timeline for Sealed. But asking somebody to pony up $220 for a booster pack that right now just seems to add up to a pittance is not where a lot of players want to be. And again, at the end of the day, there are only so many cards in the set that people are going to be interested in, and so there's going to be just a lot of singles left floating around. And that's going to impact, like I said before, my math on what I pack crack. If people aren't putting in pre-orders for these cards yet, then I'm not going to crack as many as I normally would, and I just list the Sealed and hope it sells over time, then start adjusting my buy list to bring in what I need so that I could sell Vamp and Worldly and Sylvan and Force of Will back to people. And that'll be it. And I'll just dump the Sealed on the website, for a small margin, because I'm okay with that. I'll make my margins elsewhere. I have a warehouse, everything has a COG on it, and I can make a profit somewhere to make up for any kind of loss or flat line on a product.
Yeah.
And it's really sad that this gets overshadowed immediately and puts additional stress on the LGS on the heels of an announcement that says, well, we're going to shift things around and slow down releases. Oh, by the way, we might be moving one up. And, like, where are we right now? Like, what are you doing?
What timeline is this?
Yeah.
Do words mean what they're supposed to mean to you, or is this some weird, bizarre, like, you're living in your own Hasbro-induced reality?
Yeah. So at the end of the day, this will be another product on the shelf for me. It's another SKU to add to the system. For you guys, it's got to go back on the shelf behind the counter.
Yep. As
a product to display, and then hope. Like, do you even crack?
No. Especially, like, I mean, everyone is caught on now. Singles are going to tank when the set releases. Yeah. That's just reality. Unless you're an LGS that's doing pre-orders, it's just not worth it. So you've got to be doing pre-orders. And if you're not, well, you're shit out of luck.
Okay, so at the end of the day, you're not doing pre-orders?
So some stores do. We do pre-orders in-store. We don't do them on the website.
Yep.
Which, in-store, you can just come in and say, hey, you're one of our regulars. We're more than happy to pre-order for you at whatever price we set. Knowing, well, that price is probably going to be different when the set releases. And that's okay. Everyone knows that coming in. Fine.
Yeah.
We're okay with it. That's not the case all the time. Now, if cost on these was more in line with traditional collector boosters, like 150, 160, absolutely. It would be crackable because that's probably your best way to get something out of it when you know you're going to have extra products.
Yep.
Again, kind of hard to hit your money out of that, but it's easier when it's 150. It is nigh impossible when it's 220.
Got it.
It's just not something you can really get away with,
And
unfortunately.
There's no pre-release for this, right? There's no event in support unless you want to do some kind of draft, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, so you have to rely on walk-in traffic for sales on this.
Not great.
Yeah. Because again, this is completely overshadowed by the next set coming out. So all the PR material that you're going to get to display is going to be for the new set, not this.
Yeah. Which is obviously not what you want.
Yeah.
When you have to park this much money into a product.
Yeah. So let me ask a weird logistics question then about this, because at the LGS level you can do weird things. So you have your counter space and you have your shelf space behind the counter. If this product just kind of rots for a while, is it something you move off of the shelf into the counter, be it draft set or CBBs?
So collector you will never put on the counter just because of the theft risk, right?
Loss, yeah.
Yeah. The
Sure.
draft, I think it is.
Okay.
And I think it's something that you probably start to promote, like, oh, we're going to add, some stores have their rotating draft events where if draft actually fires, they're not doing standard sets because they'll just draft that on Arena. But if it's a store that has like some old booster product like Ixalan laying around, I'm like, hey guys, we're doing a throwback draft of Ixalan this week. This is the kind of thing that I think you do that with, similar to Quad Masters.
Okay.
Where people are just happy to do it because the value's there and it's different. Granted, that happened a lot more during like Capenna when the limited environment was hot garbage.
Yeah.
I'm going to be honest, the Dom R limited environment also looks like hot garbage.
Yeah. It's an absolute reprint set, and I didn't see anything that kind of pulls interest. They did a lot of rarity shifting, it looks like, all over the place, up and down.
Yeah.
So there's some opportunity, but there's some weird cards that are just going to make for either a miserable environment or going to be duds, sadly.
Yep.
As cool as High Tide is, I don't really think you're doing much with it, but that's just, one of 261 cards to discuss.
Yeah.
Now, when it comes to not product display, but like overall placement, is this something that you would focus on when it rolls in just to get eyes on it, do you think?
Yeah. Especially on something like this, because again, it's just not... It's a product you want to get rid of, and you can't really door bust it, and it's not coming out before the holidays, which is actually the worst part for the LGS. The fact that this hits in January when we're already going to be reeling and not have a ton of money because, we'll have the money. We won't be able to sell through the way that we would have prior to Christmas because other people spent all their money at Christmas.
Yeah.
Like, it's just not going to be the thing people elect to spend money on afterwards. But if it came out beforehand, absolutely, that would be great. Unfortunately, not the case.
Okay.
So it is like, try to display, emphasize, I don't like the term upsell, but try to make people aware that, hey, this product exists too, and this may be something that they want.
Yeah.
Just to kind of get out there that, hey, this is a thing. Maybe try it out.
Okay.
And I don't think that's the worst.
That's fair. I was thinking about this earlier in the week, and nothing about this feels like the Time Spiral Remastered release, whereby that product was released very similarly. It was just a reprint of everything in the block, curated around a draft environment that did fire, but there was the extra slot that just, effectively the value slot, the value add. And that seemed to have a lot more draw than this set. And I'm looking at this not from a collector booster standpoint, but just from the draft interest. Like, I know several people that still have boxes of Remastered waiting for people to be interested to draft it. They're not cracking it for value. They're just holding on. Without an alternative option like that, or a focus, we could say, on a set like this, does it make it worse than Time Spiral Remastered for an LGS?
So Time Spiral Remastered was kind of unique because it was the first set that had the retro throwbacks. And it's, I think the analog here is you take a look at the most desired card out of that set, which was probably the Retro Border Thoughtseize foil, or the Retro Border Ponder foil. Yeah. Either of those are good analogs for like the Force of Will and what its expected value could be. The big difference is production limitations that hit Time Spiral Remastered will presumably not be there for Dom Remastered.
Mm-hmm.
So if my floor or my ceiling as an LGS at the time was $1,000 foil, and now the ceiling is a $250 foil, I don't feel as good about Dom Remastered as I do about Time Spiral because of the production, because of the wallet fatigue. You know, between the bad publicity that Wizards has gotten, the set releases and everything else, people are legitimately tired.
Yeah.
And this is, as an LGS, we're starting to feel that crunch. It's not just at events anymore that people come up to booths and they're like, hey, I just want out. I just don't like it. It's not for me. I can't get behind it. It's just not my thing.
Yep.
People are coming into the store now and doing that. In fact, we had someone come in yesterday with beta duels and a recall and 2 workshops that was like, yeah, I'm just done. I don't want to do it anymore. I don't really like the way the game is headed, stuff like that. That's just very eye-opening. And that also makes me less sure about Dom Remastered. Because if you have people that are entrenched like that are coming out, you really start to consider, okay, is this something we can actually deal with? Do we want to be super bearish on this card? Or is this like, you know what, let's hold off a little.
Mm-hmm.
Not the most important thing in the world for us.
Yeah. So at this point in time, the focus, you would say from an LGS standpoint, you feel is better placed on the standard set, something you know that's going to sell a little bit better, where the current hype is, where the PR machine is focused right now, and something that looks like it's actually going to propel the game forward instead of just put another set of Commander reprints into the ecosystem.
Exactly. And it's not necessarily that it'll sell better, and it is a more efficient use of funds. Because, you know, the standard draft, collector, set, whatever, they're much more affordable than the stuff we're dealing with on, you know, the level of Damar.
Yeah, on both sides, for you and for the players, because you get to, you know, you're paying whatever the numbers is on the standard set versus Damar, and your margin on that is effectively going to be the same, but at $220 a collector booster, that is also a lot of overhead placed on you financially.
Yeah. And it's just not something that, you know, the LGS is able to withstand like it used to be able to. You know, liquidity is key now.
Mm-hmm.
You can't really stash the way you used to be able to. So it's just not like, and again, this is people from all over, even some of the larger stores out there and some that have been established for years, have, you know, when talking to them, they're just like, yeah, I like, one of them has been doing this for since early 2000s.
Mm-hmm.
2003-ish, and he told me, look, I have never felt worse about a set. That is shocking.
Yeah, that's fair.
To hear that someone legitimately is just, I've never felt worse about this. This is garbage. This is real bad.
Yeah, when the Birds of Paradise was spoiled around M30 and people were comparing the $250 price tag for those packs and the bird that looks the exact same as the bird in Dom R, and they're like, this one cost me $250, this one's going to cost me $6. Like, it's fucking ridiculous.
Why would you partake in that? You know, it's just silly.
Yeah. At the end of the day, though, as a spectator for the game, this is a set that I would just kind of let wash past me. I didn't care about Time Spiral Remastered. I didn't draft that. I usually don't care about unsets either.
Yeah.
They're not for me. I know it. And I don't have to engage with them, or I can engage with them as I choose, which is generally by the singles I need afterwards. That's how I deal with or interact with most sets. Something like this, it'll be similar. I'm not going to hold this product on my own. I don't believe in this product in the long term. This isn't EMA that has Force and Monovault and Vampiric Tutor, right?
Yeah.
Like, that set is still a banger because the hits just keep on coming with that. DMR is not the same way. It is full of nice-to-have Commander reprints. Did Worldly Tutor need a reprint? Yeah, sure, for what it does, absolutely, but it shouldn't be, like, one of the buzzworthy cards in the set. Like, they could have done, again, a Vault or a Crypt, something else alongside Force of Will to put a little pressure on it. Like, sure, Dockside Extortionist might not live on Dominaria, but you know what? Why does that card, one, need to exist? 2 need to be legal in Commander, and 3 have to have the price tag it does. Like, at least they could have solved one of those problems and just put it in here and gave Commander players another reason to interact with this set. And it just seems like from that part, it's a swing and a miss. So there's no reason for me to open this. If this leaned one way or the other, I might actually be interested in drafting it, but this just looks miserable.
Yeah, it's not great.
Not at all. Okay. So basically, I've covered everything that I could think of from a vendor perspective about this set. Like, what my final numbers are is I'm probably going to order a portion of what distro will allocate me. I'm not going to buy my full. I'll walk on it until either we sell out really quickly the first time around, or we need to re-up to bust for singles. I'll eat, like you said, I'll eat this one by not going deep on it, so I can push into the standard set.
Exactly. Just cool. Don't worry about it. Not my thing.
Yep.
Yeah.
Ready for picks then?
Yes, let's do it.
All right, cool. So I'll go first this week.
Sure.
Now, I'm sticking with Commander, but I'm going over to blue, away from green. Now, this card is a quick turnaround for me. It's about a month old on my list, and it is Curiosity Crafter from Commander 2021.
Yes.
And when you look at stocks, it looks pretty flat, but when you zoom in, you actually realize it's coming out of a fairly deep plateau. And this went on my list in early November, which is when I bought my copies, because this card is not the fanciest or the most splashiest, but it does some interesting things. For 3 and a blue, it's a 3/3 flyer with 2 passives. 1, it says you have no maximum hand size. Great. 2, it says whenever a creature token you control deals combat damage to a player, draw a card. And we've seen that effect be very sought after in Commander, going all the way back to the first releases with like Edric, Spymaster of Trest, or whatever the Simic card is from the Riku deck. So I thought, okay, this has a number of things going for it that seemed pretty interesting, and at the time it was $2, so I bought in. And over time, we've seen the price increase on the open market and at buy list. So TCG right now is sitting at $3-ish, or $3.30, almost $3.50 now, up from $3.10 earlier in the week, with 78 listings, at near min or better. Card Kingdom is buying 45 at $2.50, and while that is down 25 cents from when I started taking my notes on this, it is still up, 25% from where we were looking at, and crested to almost $3 cash. So even if you were to buy it now, you'd still be able to make a little bit of money by arbitraging, and then if you wait a little bit, like I'll talk about later, you should be able to out the buy list for a decent amount of profit. Now, when we look at the card, well, why is this interesting? Well, half the card is applicable to any deck playing blue, because it's blue. And you have no maximum hand size, which is exactly what you want. You just want to draw all the cards. Well, where are you going to put them? Some people want to put them in the graveyard. Not all of them. Some of them just want them in their hand. The rest of them want them in their hand. And this does it. But full utilization of this comes from themes that want to create tokens, and reading the card explains the card. That basically gets you to where this is playable in Commander. Now, diving a little deeper into the format information, this is fairly agnostic when you start looking at color pairings. As long as there's blue in the Commander identity, we're seeing this card in lists, but it seems that pairing it with black is not a very common decision. Prior to the Warhammer 40k releases, we did not see a lot of interest in blue-black pairings, Esper, etc. Now we're seeing a little bit more, but it is still infrequent. It is probably the lowest on the list in 2 and 3 color pairings. One of the most important things that I'm seeing, even just at a surface level, though, is that this is being played in both go wide and go tall strategies. So this maximizes the appeal across token players because you're getting everything. Now, if you take a look at the tokens theme on Rec and you look at all combinations involving blue, this plays in 41% of Azor decks up through 88% of Simic decks, and it's listed as a high synergy card and features in all other color pairings as a regular creature in fluctuating percents from 17 and 19 in Esper and 5C respectively, all the way up to 40% of Izzet decks. This is every color combination that plays blue. This card is somewhere in a list in the 99, only as low as 17%, going all the way up to, like I said, 88% Simic decks. That's ridiculous. Again, self-reporting audience, but here we are. This is what we got. Yeah. Now, this does immediately outclass options like Edric's Master of Trust because it offers a larger body and a unilateral trigger as well as a passive. Edric actually applied to all players of the game. It was the exact same passive ability of drawing a card, but if we were playing a 4-player game and I controlled Edric, now anybody who attacks anybody with a creature is going to draw a card.
Yep.
So this is just a little tighter package overall. It costs 1 mana more, but it just completely outclasses old options. So it's immediately better than what was there previously. Now, I also have a feeling this plays at the Invisibles level as well, but as we'll discuss shortly, I'm not too concerned with that demographic. We want to get ahead of the continuing printing of token-themed commanders and precons. And the reason I say I don't really care about the Invisibles demographics is because even though token strategies are going to be seen at those tables, a lot of the overlap for Invincible cards like Cura Best the Sea Gods that just makes big, dopey tokens doesn't really overlap with this card when you take a look at Rec. And those groups are not the same, I know that, but based on velocity, etc., it's not the Invisibles pushing this card. It really is Commander players that are part of the self-reporting demographic. So, timeline. We're going to start with a few stats here. The regular art sells about 300 near mint copies a month, and that's broken out into, right now, I don't have a breakout of LP and NM total, sorry. Just 300 near mint a month. LP is actually not a great seller. But when you look at the remaining copies filtered at 4 plus, this is what I wanted to say, there are 206 near mint and LP copies across 49 vendors total. There are 115 total copies across 10 vendors with 4 plus at LP and near mint. So there's actually not a whole lot left of this card. It's like 200 and some odd out there. If Vila keeps static, we'll see the price increase by $1 in a few weeks, and that's because the cheapest listings move up $1. And in a month to 45 days, almost a double up in price, similarly. With the caveat that no one else moves into the market to reset the price. We talked about price anchoring last week. Companies like the Gaming Co. and what was it, like MtG Strategy or something like that.
Yeah.
They were anchoring my pick last week by posting 400 copies of it. You got to work through that. Like, not quite what's happening here.
Yeah.
But if somebody else were to move into the market, they could absolutely, with quantity, they could absolutely anchor the price for a while. Now, we're very close to arbitrage, like I mentioned earlier, and within the next month or two, we should be able to move these at a profit in person, but Byless is going to lag behind until demand moves from the open market to vendors, and they're forced to reset. That could take closer to 3 months. So that's kind of the timeline. Is if you want to get out in person, you want to trade these out in person, you're looking at a month or two. If you want to go Byless, you're looking at about 3 months. But again, I think this is another card that you need to keep your eyes on. It's going to move pretty quickly because there's not a lot of supply out there. There just wasn't before. There isn't now, and it's moving at a decent enough velocity that it's just going to disappear from the market before a lot of people realize. The reprint equity on this is kind of scary because the first thing I thought of was that this actually seems like a card that could be printed into standard. I thought of this alongside like Sphinx's Rev. This doesn't have flash, but this surely plays in an Azor control deck if that's what they ever want to do in standard again, where you just draw in a ton of cards and you want to keep 8, 9, 10 in your hand. But that is all that worries me about this. The power level isn't over the top, and it would be at home in a heavily token-based format, but I don't see WotC crossing the streams like that, bringing commander cards into standard. They might have done it once or twice before, but not or maybe I'm thinking of unsets into standard. But they don't really do that, and you have to focus on tokens, and we haven't seen that kind of focus since Lorwyn.
Yeah.
Right? And if we saw another Simic token style deck, like we did with XTX, the Quandrix deck or whatever, the one that made fractals, I would expect to see this in that deck. Otherwise, this gets lost to the sands of time, and that's kind of what we want. Nobody's playing this on stream right now. It's just slowly being bought out by the market. That's kind of what led me down that path of the Invisibles, but I was just like, there's no way that it's really the Invisibles pushing this card. People are buying it in quantities of 1. They're not buying it in quantities of more than that. So this is very much a commander kind of driven demand. As far as buy quantity is concerned, I got my 6 in November as kind of a penny spec to keep an eye on, and I'm happy that I picked up, I think I got another 8. So if you're out as the buy list, feel free to go real deep, but if you want to move this locally for profit, then I think a dozen is on the top end of the quantity you want to pick up, just because you're going to run out of players to trade this to. Like, I'm sure everybody plays blue, because why would you play any other color in Commander? Like, you could play mono red, but then you're just going to get cursed by the mountains.
Yep.
And that's it. That's all you lose. You just draw all your lands. So if you're playing blue, here you go. If you're not making tokens, you still have a 3/3 flyer for 4 that gives you no maximum hand size. There's no shortage of ways in blue to drop X cards. We've talked about a lot of them
Yeah,
over time. They're great looks.
they are. I think it's great. Again, having so on to the point of reprint equity, when you talk about, well, maybe there's a token thing, we already know where we're going this year.
Yeah.
None of the sets really have that much of a token theme, or have. So I don't see reprints happening. But long term, I mean, this does. It's again one of those things that hits at like not the CEDH level, but at the 75% level.
Yeah.
Where you're like, all right, I'm high power, but I'm not competitive.
Yeah, yeah.
And it hits, like you said, at the invisible level. So it hits your widest, if you're going to exclude a group of EDH from finance, CEDH is not the biggest driver. So it hits all of your incredibly relevant types in EDH that want to spend money. Just really good.
Yeah, it was surprising me to find this in every single deck that involved, or color pairing that involved blue on rec. Because I was just looking at high synergy for a while. I'm like, these are all token decks. This card has to be identified as high synergy across all the color pairings. And I started sorting my tabs, and I had like almost half my color pairings didn't have Curiosity Crafter as a high synergy card. I'm like, there's no way this card isn't in the list. And then I started searching, and it showed up in creatures, and it was there in every single one of those lists. I don't know why Is It Tokens doesn't have this as a high synergy card at 48%, what Azor does at 41%, but that's neither here nor there. There's something going on in the back end that does not identify this as a high synergy strategy when your general's like Brutal Clad or whatever.
Yeah. Like it a lot. My pick does play at every level of EDH. It's kind of a market trend pick. So last week when I picked Force of Will, I said sell it now because, or 2 weeks ago I said sell it because it's going to go down. This week I'm picking, even though I said it's a terrible set for most of this episode and people are turned off of it, Old Border Foil Counterspell from Dom Remastered. So this is the first Old Border Counterspell we have had since Mercadian Masks.
Yep.
The analogs here, obviously 7th edition and Mercadian Masks, which foils were a completely different market then. We'll take a look at the Mercadian Masks stocks graph as a basis for this. Ignore what happened in April of 21 when it spiked to $80,000. We're going to zoom in past that. You can see it basically just, it's the floor. The floor is the floor is the floor. It goes up a little bit, and now we're at a new floor that's higher than the last floor was for the foil price. Same deal with masks. And both of them are currently on a downtrend because we just got announced an Old Border Counterspell. Now, right now it's pre-selling at $6. That seems really good to me. Obviously, there's going to be a lot of foils because for Damar, we just have collector boosters and draft. There's no set. So people that are opening this for singles are obviously going to be opening collector boosters. Now, $6 is a great price to me. Any Old Border foil for $6 of an incredibly highly played card is a win. So being able to get Old Border foil, and it's the most recent art. So it's the one that people recognize more. I think that's awesome. Quantity-wise, I'd probably be looking, we're going play sets with this one, EDH sets, because it sees play in middle school, pre-modern, pauper, and honestly, just having 5 of them for EDH is not the worst thing in the world. I'm probably going to pick up about 20 of these. $100, $80, whatever. Fine. Cool. And timeline, that's where it gets kind of sketchy. So we're probably not going to, I mean, this isn't getting printed into standard anytime soon. My worry is that unless we start seeing a large concentration of modern events where we do have Counterspell legal now, you're not going to see a lot of velocity, you're not going to see a lot of high velocity improvements in the price. I think what you'll see is just a steady climb. And I think realistically, it might be about 12 months. before we see a profitable return on this. Because if there's something, recently we've noticed in sets when they come out, it's no longer, stuff spiking in 3 to 6 months because of how consistent product releases have gotten. It's taking a little bit longer for some of those cards to spike really high in price, especially with the lack of paper events and eternal formats. No Legacy, no Modern. Pioneer, I guess, just happened. But that was at a level that doesn't necessarily impact the price. Until some of that stuff changes, it is going to be a little bit longer term of a park. But Card Kingdom, they've already sold out and re-upped 5 times on their pre-orders. They're now sitting at $6, sold out again, which means they may not be relisting those until they crack and fulfill everything. I just think again, it's just a really good card. Have you ever played it? Does great things in EDH. Does great things in 60 card. I just think it's a really good opportunity because this is something that if it's selling for $6 now, it's probably going to be like $2 on release day. Granted, we've got a long time till release day, but I also don't think you can lose out at $6. This is something I'm shouting out now just to keep an eye on, and come closer to release time, I'll mention it again. Not as a pick, obviously, but hey, now is the time we have this coming out. Let's try to pick it up while we can. Just think it's a solid look.
Looking at counterspell foils is an interesting proposition for me because I was high on them when they were first reprinted in, I think it was M25.
Yeah.
A local sold me one and I was happy to have it because that was the first counterspell foil. And I was glad to have it. Eventually sold out because it just didn't do anything. It wasn't modern legal yet. I think I might have gotten out around... It must have been like before Modern Horizons hit, so I didn't get out for max value. And then after that, they just continue printing Counterspell in new border in the same art, and the prices just do nothing but fall off a cliff at release and flatline. So this is a really unique opportunity to buy into an old border Counterspell for the first time since Masks. And like you point out, with only those 2 data points in front of us, it does make sense that this is an opportunity to kind of stake your claim.
Yeah.
And move in on something to make a little bit. And I know the price point at 5 or 6 is pretty savory, and at the end of the day, I was just checking on decks, and right now, Is It Murktide is not one of the most successful decks, it's just one of the most popular, and there's a big difference there, right? But that deck runs 4 copies of Counterspell each.
Yeah.
So if you find somebody who's building Murktide, moving into Murktide, whatever, they're going to need 4, right? Modern event.
Yeah.
Cool. You got them. That's easy. As far as the rest of the format is concerned, yeah, that's a little more interesting, a little more difficult, because they have Mystical Dispute.
Yeah.
And Mystical Dispute kind of makes it easy for non-control decks to hold their own against something like Azor. Mystical Dispute is like an Omnath play.
Yeah.
But if the format ever rolls around to a point where Azor or Control can pick up more market share, that's another deck that's going to be very interested in the card Counterspell.
Yeah.
Like, if anything, if an Azor-based Stoneblade deck ever really comes up, from personal experience, Force of Negation and Counterspell are premier cards in that strategy because you can play infinite dual lands, and it is very easy to cast that spell. And I think overall, this is a really good look. The only thing I disagree on, I think, is quantity. I think a commander playset is fine, but I think in time you're going to find that you might be wishing you had more because you're going to find opportunity to move it. You mentioned we don't know when Modern Season is coming. We don't know if Modern Season is coming. But the moment we find out Modern Season is coming, now everybody pays attention to Modern Season.
Yeah.
And we have to find out what to do. And being ahead of cards like this and some of the elementals that are very cheap right now is a very good place to be. So calling out a card like Counterspell that isn't quite a pillar of that format,
but could be, and there was a time where it was.
Yes.
It's not anymore.
Is a very good idea because we get ahead of it. Just like Curiosity Crafter. We're getting ahead of what's coming. And that's what we like to do.
Yeah. That's why we pick.
Yep. So, I think that's going to be it for me on this. I don't really have much more to say about
I'm good.
Remastered. So, for MTG Cabalcast, where you can find us on Twitter, Patreon, Facebook, and YouTube, I am at HaltIamReptar. You are
At Thirsty Sizzler.
and we'll see you next week.